my name is John Messina, and welcome to another edition of Hey Coach. Today we have one of my good friends, a returnee coming back here for a few times, my good friend Rob Murphy. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks again, John. Glad to be here.
We just finished a nice season over at Martin County.
A lot of wins, 21 wins this season.
And we enjoyed it. Rob, we knew each other from Miami. You went to Columbus High School. That was kind of our rival when I was down at Pace. A little bit about your background.
I went to Columbus after, just spending my whole youth in Miami, and went to the University of Florida for a couple of years, and then got the great opportunity to play professional baseball after being drafted by the Reds, and went through the Reds minor league system, and then was in the major leagues from 1985 to 1995.
And how many different teams did you play for?
Just eight. Just eight. Yeah, that's a relief pitcher's role.
You have a uniform, you have a shirt from each one?
I certainly do.
I was thinking about that. When you were in the minors and when you got the call up, what was that like to the big leagues?
That was a hair-raising moment for me, because that's what young boys dream of. They dream of making the major league. So essentially, you dream of someone coming over to you and say, you're going to the big leagues. And for me, it was in Denver, Colorado. We had 4 games left to play in Iowa, and our manager, Gene Dusan, had come up to me, or he had called me into the office after our game that night, and I didn't know why he was calling me in, and he said, well, I want you to know you've worked hard this year, and we're going to Iowa for 4 days, and after that, you're joining the big team in St. Louis. And that was the moment. I was standing there with one little towel on, and that was the moment I dreamed of since I was 7.
I remember when I had Alex Fernandez at Pace, and after leaving Miami and also going to Day South, Alex got drafted by the White Sox. And I remember 4 in the morning, I get this phone call. He was in Alabama, half crying on the phone. Coach, they called me up. I'm going up with this guy. I don't know who he is. His name's Frank Thomas. We're both going up together. Yeah. And it was just so exciting. And I remember going up for his first game, pitching. He got rained out, but he pitched the next game against the Blue Jays, and it was really nice. Who was your first game against?
My first game was against our divisional rival, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Okay. And we were losing the first game of a doubleheader like 8-2. So the bullpen coach walked down to our end of the dugout in Riverfront Stadium. We didn't have a real bullpen with a telephone and all that. And he said, Murph, you got the top of the 9th. So they pinch hit for the pitcher in the bottom of the 8th, and I go in the top of the 9th. Took my 8 warm-ups. The guys threw the ball around the infield, and I took a little second, and I looked around and just looked at all the lights, just like in this studio. And I said, well, you did it. So I get up there, and Mike Marshall was the first guy to come to the plate. Wow. You know, former Rookie of the Year, really good player.
Yes.
You know, I threw a fastball, and he fouled it off for strike 1. Threw another fastball for a ball. And my first big league slider, Mike hit for about 450 feet into the second level at Riverfront. So welcome to the big leagues, as they say.
I remember Alex had the lead going into the 6th. Of course, they're going to pull him. This is his first game. I think he started 7th. Bobby Thigpen, who had set the record for saves the year before, comes in, and he loses the lead. And I'm sitting next to Alex's father, who starts screaming in Spanish. And I said, Mr. Fernandez, this is not high school anymore, you know? And I'll never forget, we're sitting at old Comiskey Park. And I'm sitting next to this man, very good-looking guy, and, you know, he's taking notes and everything. And I start talking to him. He knew what he's talking about. He goes to me, well, why did you come up? I said, well, yeah, I coached Fernandez. He says, well, I coached the third baseman, Robin Ventura. Found out it was Gary Ward, who was the famous coach at Oklahoma State.
Right.
About 3 hours later, in a parking lot, I asked him about 9,000 questions, and I'm writing everything down about different drills and everything. We just got done with a season of high school baseball. How do you think that's changed since you and I were down in Miami?
Well, I remember practicing as soon as we got back into school, and we played games as soon as our head coach thought we were ready. And I know my junior year, we were 22-7, so 29 games. Yeah. We played a lot during the regular season. We played Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and we played a lot of district games because we had an 8-team district, so there were 14 districts.
And only one team got out. was so much harder back then.
Yes, absolutely. And it was different. Here we have 4 to 6 district games. Through the years of having coached up here in Martin County, and it seemed like it was more workmanlike back in my day. You had to grind through your district games no matter what. Here, the kids seem to get up so high emotionally, whether it's county versus South Fork or Jensen versus county, and it seems like sometimes emotions overflow and the games can somewhat get out of hand, as opposed to just get your 21 outs, do your job, and the victor is known at the end.
When I first started coaching, there was no limit. There was no starting date. I mean, we were starting practicing around Christmas time. But again, back then you had a lot less sports. And football did not go into December, which they kind of spread it out now. But we would play, they said you could play 3 games a week, but there was no starting week. So our first games were January. So we went from January to May. The playoffs were a lot shorter. You'd play your districts, you finish on a Friday, you play your regional game on a Tuesday, your sectional game on the following Friday, and then middle of the next week, you're playing your state tournament, which was at one of the 4 locations. It's not in a central location like it is now. And I know we hosted at the Mets Stadium state tournament for 4 years, and the Mets did a phenomenal job and this and that, but it's not the same as one of the schools hosting it, because you're always going to get a big crowd.
Right.
And you're playing in these 12,000, 10,000 seat stadiums. If you get 1,000 people or 1,500 people, that's a big crowd, but in that stadium.
Still
But I remember playing in Avon Park and Leesburg and up at Jacksonville Bowls. You couldn't get a person in there. So, that's a little bit different like that. And the other thing is, and I know you and I have talked about this, they have spread it out so much that if you have one pitcher, he can go all the way. He can do his district semifinal. He can do 1, 2, 3 regional games. He can do the first state game. He can pitch 5 out of the 6 playoff games, and under the pitch limit, because they're going 1 game a week. So to me, and I don't know how you think about that, that's not the best team going, it's the best pitcher going.
That's the big difference with baseball in general. I mean, for forever,
Right.
gambling on baseball has been keyed upon who was the starting pitcher. So the success or failure of that pitcher is what really dictates the score of the game. So having one pitcher to be able to pitch 5 or out of the 6 or 7 games is a big advantage if you have the right pitcher. But even nowadays, I think about the pitching staff that we run at Martin County. We wouldn't run a kid through that let's say gauntlet of appearances. I mean, in the almost 10 years now for me coaching, I've never had one of our pitchers get over 55 innings in a season. Where at Columbus in my junior and senior year, I pitched over 100 innings each year. So it was very different. I mean, back then it was Tuesday for pitcher A, Wednesday for pitcher B, Friday for pitcher A, Tuesday for pitcher B. So you would pitch 2 games in a week, Tuesday and Friday. Come back, and there were no pitch counts. So you would really have to be struggling to get to a mythical pitch count where the coach would say, well, you've had enough.
Yeah. Or you came out, you said, I can't go anymore on that.
I never said that.
You would never say that. I never had anybody say that either. But now we could talk about this all day. With Major League Baseball, all the different changes that they have had, runner on second base in the extra innings. What do you think about that?
Well, I'd never heard of that until my daughter started playing travel softball. And that's what you do once you get to a certain count of innings. And it's like, wait a second, how do you just put the last batter out at second? And what happens if that runner scores? But both teams get the same opportunity.
Correct.
So it's not favoring one team or the other. But it's just a quick way to end the game is really what it comes to. You'd hate to see.
They don't want to go too much longer. They don't want to go 16, 17 innings.
Yes, and I participated in plenty of those in the major leagues. And usually when you go that far, it's 0-0, 0-0, 0-0. So it's one of those games. And to end it early, is fair, unfair. You know, it's the same for both teams. But I have seen in one of Scarlett's college games at NYU, they won a tiebreaker game 20-9 with an 11-run differential. Wow. They scored that many runs off of a runner at second and an out. Wow. So it's something that it's a little bit artificial. What are the teams really accomplishing in Major League Baseball? I'm not sure yet.
And somebody posed a question to me the other day. How can you pitch a perfect game and lose?
I answered that right back to you.
I know you did.
Because my daughter Scarlett did that. Her freshman year at NYU, she had gone in the game at whatever point, and she had pitched 5 perfect innings. And so now they're in the tiebreaker, and the other team had gotten their runner from second to third after a sacrifice bunt, and they hit a fly ball to the left field. The left fielder caught it, and the girls scored. NYU didn't throw the ball to home plate.
So you can basically have a pitcher retire all 27 batters. He's the visiting team. His team does not score in the top of the 10th. In the bottom of the 10th, runner on second base, they move him over on a ground ball. Batter 28 is retired.
Yes.
Sacrifice fly ball, he scores. Batter 29 is retired. He loses the game on a perfect game.
Right. No earned runs, though.
No earned. Now, let's see if that comes to fruition with all these no-hitters. After last night where Corey Kluber threw one for the Yankees, that's 6 already. Now, you and I think we're on the same philosophy about the way batters are approaching. And I know it gets down to high school a little bit, and I know I have a little fits on this a little bit with the kids trying to do exit velocity. The month of April, there was 1,100 more strikeouts in the major leagues than there were hits. Now think about that, 1,100 more.
It's mind-boggling. I know last year, or maybe it was the year before, the first time there were ever more strikeouts than hits, and now there are 1,100 more already. It doesn't make any sense to the old school way of baseball, and it's always like it's like 2 kids in a fight. Well, he did it first, she did it, he did it. Who's going to make the adjustment? Who's the first left-handed hitter that's going to start hitting the ball to the left side of the infield and just take that single or maybe a double? But they keep pulling the ball into the hole, and there's someone there waiting, and they're still out.
You know where that left-handed hitter is now? He's probably down in the minors.
Right.
Because that's the way the approach is. Now, I was looking up some stats. They're on pace to have 208 batters in the major leagues strike out over 100 times. And then I'm looking at some of the stats. I looked up some Yankee stats. Joe DiMaggio, 3rd hitter, 4th hitter on the Yankees, 3 or 4 batter. All his years, never struck out more than 38 times.
Wow.
Yogi Berra never struck out more than 37 times, and he was a 4 or 5 batter, okay? You know, the strikeouts, there's nothing wrong with strikeouts in the major league viewpoint, because the next guy can hit a home run. The problem is, when you wheel that down to college, and you wheel that down to high school, we don't have that batter that's going to hit the home run after you strike out.
A high school lineup is lucky to have 2 kids that can hit the ball out of the park with the wind blowing out. So,
Right.
so that power component is very limited, and the strikeouts are more detrimental to any team's offense.
Right. And you know, again, I always tell everybody the most important thing in high school, scoring a run. If every starter scores a run, we're going to go undefeated, because nobody's going to score 10 runs off us.
Right.
Right? That's the most important thing in high school. Put the ball in play. All right? You don't see these great fielding percentages that much anymore. One of the reasons there's so many strikeouts, there's not so many balls in play. So if you make 1 or 2 errors on 10 balls in play, there goes your fielding average down there.
Absolutely. It has distorted that for sure. And it's even when we talk about in high school, if you strike out 10 guys, that's almost half of the outs.
Right.
And your errors are that much more substantial at that point.
Now, something that you would know probably better than anybody is the role of the relief pitcher. How has that changed over the years?
I think the current change with the relief pitcher having to throw to 3 hitters unless they've already ended the inning
So explain that rule a little bit. Well,
So if a relief pitcher comes into an inning and with 2 outs and he gets the hitter out, the inning's over and the relief pitcher can be done and the manager can put in a new pitcher. This year, if the relief pitcher doesn't get that first guy out, he could face 2 more hitters after that, having to face a minimum of 3 hitters unless he's finished the inning. So I've already seen it where a relief pitcher will come in, let's say for the Red Sox, where the guy will walk the first 2 guys. Well, after the first walk, he may get taken out in the old days. After the second walk, there's no chance he's staying in the game, and now he's got to face another hitter. That's got to be agony for the 30 managers right now whenever the guy that they bring in to get out of the inning is extending it with lack of control.
Do you think he starts grabbing his arm and says his arm's hurting after the second batter?
Well, that's only going to go so far, so that's a tough one.
And then also, what do you think about the relief pitchers starting?
The opener you're referring
is that
to?
What you call
The opener.
Started by Tampa Bay.
Yeah, it's interesting the things that really have come out of the Tampa Bay organization.
Yeah.
You know, Joe Madden was pretty good with, let's say, creating some new things in a 150-year-old game. It's not easy to do. The opener does a couple things, right? You say, all right, I'm going to start a right-handed pitcher as the opener. So typically the other team will put all their lefties in the lineup. But now, 5 days ago, you had your left-handed pitcher throw 100 pitches, so he's going to come in for the 2nd through the 8th inning. Are you really going to put all those left-handed batters in that lineup? It's a real good game of chess there, and I can appreciate that part of it, but the mindset of a relief pitcher is way different than, all right, I'm starting today in 10 hours, in 6 hours, 3 hours, as opposed to the phone rings, hey, get up, you're facing the next hitter, and you hurry and get warmed up, and then you're in the game. So it's for me, I know personally, I didn't want to know I had to pitch 5 days from now, and 4 days from now, and 3 days from now.
Now, you mentioned something, I'm going to throw this at you. I don't know if you know the answer. How come they don't use cell phones, and they still get phones on the wall? Nobody has answered that question for me.
That's interesting. I haven't really thought about that. I mean, I was still playing before we all had cell phones. And, you know, there used to be signals, you know, lefty, righty, you know, some of those easy things. And now, I mean, in the dugout, they've got a closed circuit monitor so they can see what the relief pitchers are doing. I'm glad they didn't have that in our day because there was a lot of non-baseball stuff going on.
Another big kind of change is in the batting order. You know, you would have your leadoff guy get on, second batter moves him over, 3, 4, 5 are your big hitters, 9 are your worst hitters. I mean, we go from sometimes you put your pitcher in the 8th spot in the National League and your 9 guy is up in front of 1 and 2. But even more important is you're putting your big guys hitting. Now, even in high school, look at us the last few years. 3 years ago, we had a power hitter, Brandon Mondragon, leading off for us, who hit 9 home runs. Okay?
It was great.
It was great. This year, we had somebody equally as good, but in a different way, Luis Alvarez, who got on base almost over 500% of the time and was a typical leadoff hitter. The major leagues are going with these big guys leading off, and more important, it kind of blows my mind a little bit, you got Aaron Judge or Mike Stanton batting second, who's a big strikeout guy also.
It has upended, some of the analytics have upended the traditional type of lineup chemistry. And I know that if you just do the math, right, you have 27 outs, and your leadoff hitter, if he can't produce a run, you're giving up 3.7% of, let's say, your team's lifespan that can't be productive on the ultimate thing, which is scoring runs. So put a leadoff hitter that can hit a home run. But leadoff hitters for decades and century plus has been the get-on-base guy for baseball.
Right.
And they get groomed. Everybody up until now has been groomed. The leadoff hitter is a certain mold, and the second hitter is a certain mold. Well, now that's all gone into the wind, and We've got a lot of home runs, and we've got a lot of strikeouts in professional baseball now.
I mean, even when I was down in Miami, we had a leadoff hitter that could hit home runs, but also he was great with the bat. He would never strike out. I mean, that's the thing. You would hate starting a game in high school with a strikeout. To me, that's the worst thing, given the emphasis on the other team.
You know, the old adage is you can't steal first base.
Right.
You've got to earn your way on, and that's either via a hit, a walk, a hit by pitch.
Or whatever.
And strikeout is not one of those things that earns you first base. And it changes the whole flow of the start of the game, and it's very important to get off on the right foot.
But everything trickles down. I mean, this didn't start in high school.
No.
This started in major leagues, went to college. I don't know if college does it that much as high school is trying to do it now, you know? But I mean, this is definitely we talked about the analytics. You have your viewpoint on that. I have my viewpoint on that. I wonder if some of these analytic guys ever played ball, you know, or caught a baseball, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, they're looking at statistics. You know, I was watching the game the other night, and a guy made a diving catch in right field, and he said, geez, he had 10% chance of catching that. How do you know that? How do you know what kind of jump he had? How do you know, did he see the ball off the bat?
Was the ball in the lights?
Was the ball in the lights?
Those numbers don't get calculated with all that human interaction. It's blood, sweat, and tears, reaction, and it's not a 10% chance. It's either a 100% chance or a 0% chance.
You make the play, you don't make the play.
Right.
It's that simple. But, you know, everything is getting to this where, you know, I don't know for sure, but you hear some of these talks that, geez, the general managers are calling down to the dugout, and they're telling the manager, this is the guy to go in based upon our analytics here. Can you imagine some of the managers, and I know we're going to talk about Pete Rose in a minute. Pete would have broke that phone in half, right?
Well, exactly. That was the manager's duty to run the field.
Right.
That's why they're called the field manager. But today, with the power of the computer, everything is brought down to an objective decision that's already printed on a piece of paper, and then certain time of the game you use this hitter. And you know, back in even my day, not that long ago, you know, you had 5 or 6 guys that could pinch hit off the bench. Now they have 3. So your options are really limited, and one of them is a backup catcher. You never use your last catcher.
The backup catcher.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have 2 options off the bench, so it's really not as important. But now it's flipped over to having 7 or 8 relievers and keep rolling through those guys. And you have to let them face at least 3 guys or get out of the inning. So that's a big logjam in today's version.
Now, what was the story last year in the World Series with Blake Snell? That the question was, I think you asked me, when did Blake Snell know he was coming out of the game? He retired. He had 1 guy on base. Went through the lineup twice.
Yeah, the top 3 guys had struck out a total of 6 times,
right.
all 6 at bats. And when I know, watching from my chair, when he gave up the hit to the number 9 hitter, he had a disgusted look on his face. I'm like, wow, okay. So there's 2 outs and a guy on first. I love that situation, right? That should be easy to get out without a run.
And he's facing a batter that he struck out
twice.
Right.
And here came Kevin Cash, and he's out there, and there wasn't even a discussion. The ball got handed from pitcher to manager, and the pitcher walked in, and then the relief pitcher, for the 2nd year in a row, came in, and the biggest analytics decision in the World Series was made incorrectly, and the offensive team took over and won the World Series. So a friend of mine that I got into a text string with that night and the next morning told me that Blake Snell knew that he was not facing the top of the lineup 3 times at breakfast that morning. Wow.
Can you imagine some of the pitchers that you knew when you were playing and that I had watched on TV? There's no way in the world it would ever came out. I mean, even going back, not that far back, somebody like Pedro Martinez, you think he ever would have came out in a situation like that?
No chance.
There's no chance.
No chance. Gibson, Drysdale, those guys.
They just would have pointed.
Nolan Ryan? Yeah, right.
Pointed, get back in the dugout, right?
Yes.
Nolan Ryan would have gave the look of death to these people. Toughest batter you ever faced?
The toughest batter I ever faced? Well, I had a great job description, being a left-handed reliever in the National League, and the guy I faced the most was Tony Gwynn. Faced him 28 times.
Wow.
I was able to get him to lower his lifetime batting average. So I say that as being a successful venture over the course of
How
about
did you pitch him?
I learned that those great left-handed hitters, their vision was so good, you couldn't fool them going in and out and trying to change speeds. So at the end of my career, when I went back to the National League, when I had to face a guy like Barry Bonds, for example, the one slider I threw him is where he got the hit. I think it was 1 for 7 when I went back into the National League, and I think I had 4 strikeouts, and they were on all fastballs. But it wasn't in and out, it was up and down. And those guys, they can get their hip out of the way, they can lock their hip to stay on the pitch that is away, and it was tougher to try to pitch around them. You just had to pitch right at them.
The batter that you had most success against?
Well, that's an easy one because the name on his jersey was the same on mine. It was Dale Murphy.
Really?
And again, back in those days with 2 divisions, you played the teams in your division 18 times.
Wow.
So we played against the Braves 18 times, and it was a lot of games through the course of 3 or 4 seasons. And Dale Murphy was 0 for 14 with 4 strikeouts. So, yeah, I wasn't letting any family member say, well, he got you tonight. He never got me.
How did you like playing for Pete Rose?
It was great playing for Pete Rose. He didn't worry about what happened yesterday, wasn't worried about the game tomorrow. Tonight was the thing, and he was very inspirational for me. He was very highly motivating, and I loved pitching for him.
And he knew the game.
Oh, every bit of the game.
Every bit of the
The
game.
greatest thing that I think I did in my time with Pete is listen to him talk to our hitters about hitting, because the perspective that he had and the hitters that he had faced, all that hitting knowledge, he would sort of gave me the blueprint of how to get good hitters out just listening to him.
Okay, and we just got a few minutes left. What's your picks for this year?
My picks for
Your
this
picks
year.
for this year,
Wow.
okay?
That's always tough. You know, it's
I know it's only May.
yeah, it's so early. You know, the Dodgers have had their run through the National League West for years now. Was it 8 division championships in a row? You know, reigning World Series champ. They're probably the first team that won't win it this year because of that tough division.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's gotten tough this year. You know, the Mets have got a guy like DeGrom who can beat anybody on any given night, and
When he gets Syndergaard back,
yeah,
it could be
you know,
tough.
things are going to improve there. I don't know. There are so many good teams that go, and as long as you don't get no hit, you got a chance to win.
It's going to be a lot of no-hitters. As of this date in May, there has been 6 no-hitters.
Crazy.
Okay, the record is 7, I think,
Right.
and it's going to be probably broken by the time the show gets aired. You know, but I really want to thank you. I really enjoyed coaching with you, and you know, we'll get back at it again next year, and we'll see what happens. But I want to thank everybody for watching the show, and say another edition of Hey Coach.